To build a melodic solo, we don't just need the notes, we need the accent, the inflection, the style, a certain what the French would call Hi, and welcome to the Saxophone Academy. I'm Dr. Wally Wallace, and if you're interested in saxophone masterclasses and product reviews, please do subscribe and be sure to hit the like button to make your skills swing harder than a troubled marriage in the 1970s. Now today is part 2 in a 6-part series on jazz scales. Now last week, to refresh your memory, we talked about doing scales in full range and also alternating the motion and not always starting on the tonic of the scale. Tonic meaning the first scale degree. Now this week we're going to dive into articulation patterns because it don't mean a thing if it hath not got that swing. So we're going to start to make your scales swing a little bit and start to add the inflection and articulation that makes it sound much more jazz-like than your typical classical scales. Now, if you haven't seen part 1, please do watch it where we insist that you practice your scales full range to make sure we're covering the entire range of the saxophone. There's nothing more frustrating than hearing something in your head, a melodic idea or a motive, and your fingers, you don't have the technique to go up there. The brain, the mind is willing, but the flesh is weak and untrained. What were we talking about? So in addition to doing full range scales, we also needed to practice with articulation patterns. But I actually don't like doing articulation patterns in the full range. As you get to the turnarounds and the upper extremes of the saxophone, it puts the emphasis on the wrong syllable. It gets very wonky and strange, kind of like Twin Peaks, where it's kind of cool, but kind of wonky, but you don't want to tell your friends that you don't think it's cool because you're really more confused. It's exactly like that. And as always, all the exercises that we're working on today and all of the exercises in the 6-part skill series you can download for free in the PDF. The link is below. Now, concept 1. We need to make sure you're not tonguing every note. So obviously that doesn't work. A big part of the swing style is learning to tongue the offbeats and slurring to the downbeats so it sounds more like this. And that's actually the basis of how we create the swing and bebop style. Now you may have been taught, like I was a million years ago, that swing style was a triplet rhythm, something like this. But of course, M-I-C-K-E-Y-M-O-U-S-E, that's the Mickey Mouse style of swing. It's not really authentic, and it's not how the masters and your heroes played. So here's how I want you to start practicing these scale patterns. First, do them slurred to make sure all the technique is clean and even. Then add a light articulation where marked on the sheet. And once the scale feels clean and somewhat effortless as you can make it sound, then add a little bit of accent on the offbeats. But remember, accent is created by the air, not the tongue. We're not hitting the tongue with the reed. Remember, the tongue releases the reed, allowing it to vibrate. Our air creates the accent. So we're going to add air accents on the offbeat for a little bit of inflection. And this will lay the groundwork for a good post-1940s bebop and swing style. You notice we don't have a lot of lilt or triplet feel to the rhythm after the 1940s. Now there are some instances, depending on the style, the genre, the player, and the tempo especially, where we will have a little bit of lilt or triplet feel to the sound. How much, you ask? I can't answer that. And trying to answer that is almost pointless because all the answers are in the records. None of these exercises make any difference if you're not listening to the masters. All the answers are there on the records. I'm just here to help guide you and build some technique to do what you're hearing. You'll also notice that all these exercises end in 2 eighth notes. One long, one accented, a, do, dat. Now you'll notice that's an incredibly common articulation in jazz. Find in the middle of solos, the ends of solos, the beginning of solos. It's a ubiquitous sound to jazz and especially bebop. Do, dat, bebop. Get the picture? Now, the reason I'm having you end all these patterns with a good doodad articulation is to get you in the habit of practicing ending your phrases. I find that newer improvisers tend to have some good ideas to start, some interesting melodic development, and then the phrase just kind of ends poorly in a disappointing fashion, like the final season of Game of Thrones, where it's not just Bran that was broken. What were we talking about? Now let's talk pitfalls. A couple of things I want you to avoid. One of the most common problems I hear when students start to do the swing articulation is clipping the downbeat. That kills the forward momentum of the line, makes it sound very choppy, and it doesn't sound like good phrasing at all, and it's certainly not the jazz style. We want to make sure our airstream pushes constantly through the phrase. We're simply accenting the offbeats, not clipping the downbeat to create an accent. Now, the next biggest problem I hear is whenever there are two eights that should be articulated do-dat, students often slur them together and play do-it, trying to create the accent by clipping it short. Now, no matter how short you clip it, it's not going to be accented, and it's not going to sound cool, Jared. So we want to make sure we're actually doing a do-dat, not a do-it. So the do-it that I hear all too common sounds like this. Make sure instead we're playing do-dat. We've also got a couple of patterns to start working on double time articulation. We don't want our double time to be a long flurry of arrhythmic nonsense, soupy notes. We want to make sure it still has rhythmic drive, even in the double time. So there's a lot of ways to do that, but a common way that's a good place to get you started is simply tonguing the large downbeats. At certain tempos, we simply can't tongue all the offbeats. It's, you'll hurt yourself. So we want to make sure we're at least tonguing the downbeats to give it some forward rhythmic drive. Again, there's a lot of variations and different players play double time tongued different ways depending on the line and the direction, but this is a good starting place to at least make sure you don't have a big amorphous soup of notes. So make sure you download the sheet and start working on it, and this should keep you busy until our lesson next week when we start to work on some more cool jazz scale patterns and have some surprises along the way I think you're going to like. Now, this is Thanksgiving week in America, so to all my American students, most happy of Thanksgivings to you. And to the international students, I'm thankful for you joining us. I'm thankful that you're part of the Academy. And I really feel that go practice.